All right. So let us turn to page number 8. I will also share the screen. All right. Page number 8. Now we have to start from what is the breath meditation. I think we read this earlier when we were going through the sutra, but we will go through it again. What is the breath meditation? Writing from an experiential viewpoint of a practicing meditator of the forest tradition, Sujato gives us an instructive explanation of the nature of the breath. What exactly is the breath? There is a certain experience at the beginning of each breath, a different experience in the middle, and yet another at the end. These experiences are simply awareness of the air element, but it is perception that marks them off as the breath. Only the physical impact of the air on the nerve endings is registered by body consciousness. Now, if we just look at this specific part, this one. But it is perception that marks them off as the breath. Now, what is this about? When we observe the breath, when we initially, of course, we are unable to divide between the beginning, the middle, and the end. But as we progress within our meditation, we come into, or we develop the skill of being able to now observe without the interaction, if you understand what I mean. What I mean by interaction is sort of clinging on to the object, right? Now, for example, initially in the beginning stages, when we were observing the breath, that internal dialogue that arose, that sort of concluding remarks that we would sort of make with regards to the breath does not arise at this point, right? So then what does perception seem like at this point, right? The perception, and I would welcome your thoughts also and your reflections on your personal practice as well. The perception here refers to a sort of vitarka which does not do or play out the clinging process. A simple noticing that arises. The noticing itself becomes a perception, right? Now, let us say, if we are to take this mug of mine, right? Now, when you are looking at the mug, right, we would go into the details. There's white on top, yellow on the bottom, whether it looks a nice mug or not, whether all these details, right? At this point, right, at this point that we are referring to within this document, it simply is mug. Do you understand? Right? Now, of course, this would be a bad example. Why? Because the variations, right? Because of the variations, specifically the color, right? However, with the breath, there is clarity. It is one, right? So the perception that would occur at that moment is the middle breath, right? Or basically middle breath, the arising breath. Do you understand what I mean? There is no sort of trying to pull it apart, trying to understand it. That itself becomes the understanding, with clarity, right? Then as we progress, that becomes the base for further understanding and insights to occur in the future as we progress. Do you understand? But earlier, if you remember with your practice, we try to evaluate, isn't it? Is this the long breath? Is this the short breath? Is this the voluntary breath? Is this the involuntary breath? Am I breathing okay? Am I sitting up okay? All of these questions, isn't it? Right? But at this stage, that does not, it's not an evaluation process that plays itself out. It is simply a noticing process with clarity. Do you understand? Right? Of course, this part where we are able to see the middle, the beginning, the middle, and the end would only occur when we progress in developing, cultivating, and further developing the skill of letting go and simple noticing. Right? These experiences are simply awareness of the air element. Right? Simply awareness of the air element. Now, what does this mean? Now, the breath, initially again, when we see the breath is connected to self. That is why inherently we all tend to also control it. It is almost seen as a part and extension of ourselves, right? And maybe as meditation teachers and guides, we would also maybe in the beginning explain it as so, just to sort of give people a little bit of an understanding. But as we progress, we realize, or what we sort of come to embrace is the breath without self. The breath as a nature, right? So whilst we are sort of seeing or referring to the breath as the air element, take it simply as that air element. Not my air element, or the air element being another word for the breath. Simply the air element, a mechanism of nature, playing itself out as a part of this composition of mind and body. An air element which is existent within this composition as well as within the Bahira compositions as well, the outer world and the inner world, the air element. This then plays a role in the further cultivation of letting go, in the further cultivation of the skill of letting go. Is that clear, everyone? But it is perception that marks them off as the breath. Only the physical impact of the air on the nerve endings is registered by the body consciousness. See, that's the non-self, right? That body consciousness reports to the mind consciousness, which performs the most sophisticated cognitive tasks, such as recognition, interpretation, and so on. Such as recognition, interpretation, and so on. The function of vitakka, right? Please do not misunderstand the word interpretation. Here, interpretation is simply a process that we might sort of also be able to assume through the chittavitis. It is not the interpretation as in sort of digging into or trying to sort of excavate, right? It is a sense of knowing of the process that plays out body and mind. Is that clear, everyone? Yeah, and so on. The function of vitakka is to initiate thoughts, and vichara to sustain chains of thought. And vichara to sustain chains of thoughts is transformed by applying them not to perceptions of verbal construct, but to perceptions of the breath. Is that clear? See, not perceptions of verbal constructs, but to perceptions of breath. Simply, it is not what you think it is. It is simply the clarity of object that has now arisen. Yeah, clarity of object that has arisen. Actively directing the mind away from the diversity of sense experience onto the breath. Doing so, over and over, the common features of the breath become apparent. By combining the shared features of the breaths recognized by perception and by ignoring irrelevant data. By combining the shared features of the breath recognized by perception and by ignoring irrelevant data, right? By ignoring irrelevant data, the mind forms a stable and coherent concept or mental image of the breath. What does that mean, right? By combining the shared features of the breaths recognized by perception, adverting of the mind upon the breath happening again and again and again. Is there a bit of a lag in my voice? No, it's clear. Okay. By combining the shared features of the breath recognized by perception, adverting the mind towards the breath object again and again, right? Here, the perception is based upon the breath, and by ignoring irrelevant, ignoring anything to do with anything else other than the breath, right? The mind forms a stable and coherent concept or mental image of the breath. Now, in this process of ignoring that happens, now we've all done this, of course, right? Where we sort of try to ignore the disturbances that might arise, you know. Remember that virya, shraddha, prajna plays a very important role at this point, where the virya that is being put forward to make sure, I'm sorry, let me reword myself, to make sure that the virya that is put forward with yonsu mansikara, right? When we say yonsu mansikara, this is to say that there is prajna behind the virya. When there is prajna behind the virya has a more powerful edge over what it does. Also, the result of virya becomes different. Do you understand? Right? Now, for example, let us say we extend our efforts into doing something. Let's say something which is good, something which is deserving of respect and praise, something which is looked up to and adorned by those who are wise, as you know, the Tripitaka says. Now, we've all done things of this sort. We've done good things, right? Now, we know that the act itself is something which is noble and praiseworthy. Let us take the simple act of giving a dana, right? Now, in this case, there is virya that is put forward in accomplishing the function that you want to do, the task that you want to accomplish. However, if the prajna is not there, now what happens? Right? Now, I'm not talking about a non-meditator's perspective. I'm talking about a meditator's perspective, right? If the prajna is missing, of course, we can talk about the kusala and all of that, but that is not the concern in this case. If the prajna is missing, the virya that is put forth towards accomplishing of the task, the result could very well turn into an egocentric notion of self. මට මේක කරන්න පුළුවන්. මම මේම කරා. Right? කරලා තියෙනවා. The egocentric aspect of it. When the prajna is there, that egocentric aspect is not there. Right? Now, the prajna being there, the virya that is put forward becomes as, let us say, or let us think of a sword that can cut the kilesas into pieces and remove it. It becomes something of that sort. right? Where it does not support self, but it supports the further understanding of non-self. Do you understand? Right? But the task at hand is good. So if we take it in Abhidhamma terms, we could say, because the task is something which is good, it is a kusala. Right? Whether it be something which is prompted or unprompted, right? Prompted or unprompted, with wisdom or without wisdom. But remember, it is those that are accompanied by wisdom that also makes it to the end to support the attainment of Nibbana. Is that clear, everyone? Yeah. The mind forms a stable and coherent concept or mental image of the breath. When we advert to the object again and again and again and again and again, we develop a comprehensive understanding of what the breath is. This understanding of the breath itself is what the image of the breath is. Right? Now, the image built with these descriptions of data that we have come to attain through our insights, right, is what builds the mental image of the breath. That mental image of the breath is also what then allows the person to advert to that same state of conscious awareness throughout that person's practice, moving on. Right? Now, when the person knows the breath proper, when the person understands the position of the breath that you have personally, you can go into that state within the first minute of your meditation. But that is only made possible if an understanding is present. But again, remember, this understanding is not egocentric. This understanding is purely based not on you, but the object, which is in this case, the breath. Do you understand? Right? So just like, for example, a nimitta, the moment that you bring the nimitta to mind, you are able to attain to it. Right? In the same manner, even though we might not have a nimitta per se, the breath, the clarity of understanding we have over the breath allows us to tap into that, go into that stage anytime that we wish to. Right? That is the use of the mental image of the breath. Is that clear, everyone? Right. If anyone has any questions. iPhone, your mic is unmuted. Do you have a question? I'm guessing not. Okay. Now, the function interpretation. Okay, where are we here? As contemplation deepens, the physical breath becomes very fine, so that its impact, originally overpowering, fades, and the settling mind gains more appreciation of the subtle mind consciousness, Originally overpowering, fades, and the settling mind gains more appreciation of the subtle mind consciousness, This is a process of really settling into the moment, embracing that moment, understanding the subtlety present in that moment, and finding a sense of calm and bliss with that respective moment. Here, the meditator is going beyond the first 4 steps of mindfulness of breathing, which fall within body contemplation. A luminous rapture rises. The mind floats up like a balloon relieved of its ballast, as the heavy burden of the body is disappearing. as a heavy burden of the body is disappearing, because we grow away from the material bondage to now more the mental image that has arisen. The mental image has taken us into a position where now we do not need to be connected to the body to be with that breath, allowing us to now go beyond the body in a way, right? Where everything now comes to a state where it slowly disappears. The grossness of existence at that moment dwindles away, the grossness, coming into a state of subtlety, calmness, blissful tranquility. The subtle reflection of the mind in the breath is now almost the sole object in awareness. The subtle reflection of the mind in the breath is now almost the sole object in awareness. Now, this is where we sometimes assume that the breath has completely disappeared itself and nothing exists, right? And nothing exists. But as we then sort of again mature from that position and stage, right? Mature from that position and stage, we come to realize it is present, but in a finer sense of its existence, not in the grosser sense that we once knew it to be in, right? That we knew it to be in. But we must allow that maturation process to happen without drawing concluding remarks too early in our practice. It is not up to us to cultivate a remark or conclusion over the position. The insight does that for us. And that also falls under the category of practice that we have in being able to let go of self-made constructs at that moment. The refined concept, this refined concept, because of ignoring fluctuations in detail, has an enduring quality which outlives the changing physical phenomena it is derived from. Has an enduring quality which outlives the changing physical phenomena it is derived from. Can anyone relate to this bit here? This bit. This refined concept. iPhone, yes? I'm sorry, I don't know your name. I'm calling you iPhone. Do you want to say something? I'm guessing not. Okay. Yes, Shriyani.
Is it Preeti Sukha stage?
Preeti Sukha stage has an enduring quality which outlives the changing physical phenomena it is derived from. I mean, Preeti Sukha can arise from this, but it is not the Preeti Sukha stage per se. But if you can, if in any way, Shriyani, you or anyone else, of course, could relate to an understanding where now the breath is present. I think I remember Hemamali speaking of this earlier. Remember Hemamali? Right? Hemamali
Yes,
speaking of this earlier.
yeah.
Right? Where this is where the breath, we've observed the breath. We've gone through the disappearance of the material in a dark space, almost in a sense, with a sense of nothingness, right? And we are left with an object. The object is present. Remember, the mind always has an arambana, isn't it? Abhidhamma 101, right? The mind always has an object. So here, in this case, what is the object? The mental image, in this sense, the fine mental image. which almost seems that it is it is in a position that it's standing still.
Yeah. Bhante,
Almost so still that we might not see it.
Bhante, I'll like to mention my experience now, Bhante. I feel like the mental image of the breath, like about 7 inches front of my nose or something. That in some subtle breath in front of me or something.
Yeah.
Yes. Now that's the feeling I got actually today in the morning, Bhante.
Do you have a visual?
No visual, but
No.
feeling of the breath about 7 inches front of my tip of the nose.
Yes.
And can watch that without any. I feel like watching longer or something, observing or something.
Could you repeat that last bit again?
Yeah, Bhante, I felt that thing in front of my nose, about 7 inches, and stay with that. No Vedana, nothing, but I can just simply watch.
Yes.
As you said, you asked me to watch equanimously. So I remember that word. Actually, I told my friend also, at that point, I remember your advice, simply to watch equanimously.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. Okay.
Bhante, what happened to me is I went straight. I don't know why. I didn't have that experience, but I went into that blissful feeling. Blissful feeling. That's what happened to me.
Okay.
It empty, and then the blissfulness. Then only I realized it was a Priti Sukha.
Yeah.
Can that happen? Or do we all have to go through the same process, the techniques, the structure, that particular structure?
This is the thing, right? Now, in front of us, I have the computer in front of me at this point, right? As all of you would have some sort of digital device in front of you. But that's not the only thing that is in front of you. There are many sort of, different things in front of me. But my main focus, my main object is the computer. But maybe if I sort of walk along to the side of the room and I am to sort of see, maybe directly in front of me would not be the computer, but something else. What are we looking at? Then comes into question. At this moment, even the position that Hemali is mentioning, we can take it on to the Priti Sukha aspect, right? From the focus of the breath, we can go into the Priti Sukha, which is what Hemali was doing earlier, right? She was focusing on the blissful nature of that presence, right? Thinking that there was nothing, right? What are we looking at comes into question. When the Sukha arises, when the bliss is present, even at the position of tranquility, if now the object becomes a tranquility itself, then we might be at the same stage, but my focus is on the tranquility. Right? However, there are positions within the meditation where one factor becomes, of course, predominant over the rest, where the Priti Sukha becomes more overwhelming or presents itself in a more overwhelming, saturating manner that we cannot neglect it. That stage is different. Right? So what does your stage look like, or feel like, rather? Look or feel, however we would try to determine it. What does that stage look like? Because what we tend to, or what the Buddha's instruction tends to be, is simple. Keep on noticing the breath. As we have gone through in this sutra, isn't it? The notice simply being on the breath. Everything that arises up to a certain point is then put aside and the focus remains on the breath. Devika, your hand is up. You're muted still, Devika.
Unmute. Okay.
All right.
Can you hear me now? Okay. So this is my question, Bhante. So when I'm meditating, I get into deep concentration about the breath. I keep concentrating on the breath. Then I feel the breath go away, but then I see like visuals, which I don't want to get into, look at, right? Because I see it's a yellow, pale yellow glow that comes. So then I feel, no, I shouldn't get attached to that. I mean, not go look at that, but I bring my mind back to the breath, because I only want to concentrate on the breath and not get attached to any things that I see. Is that right, Bhante?
Yes. And in that position, you can do it in two ways. Some people are strong enough to simply brush it aside and bring their focus onto the meditation, meditation at hand. Some people can simply do it. Other people might need a little bit of support, right? Where they might have to see, you know, that our main focus should be upon the breath, and that there is nothing here, right? But we do not do a vipassana over it, but it is just a very brief mental communication process that takes place at that point. Right? Now let us say visuals of more sort of active elements that arise, like flashing lights or that sort of thing, fireflies, or, you know, different things of that sort, whirlpools, whirlwind, that sort of a thing. So then, which can be quite sort of overpowering in a way, because all of a sudden we start seeing this sort of these different visuals. And of course, when we've not seen it before, it's something special, isn't it? Right? It's something special, it seems like, or feels like, rather. Wow, you know, I'm actually getting somewhere, we often think, right? So it is very normal that sometimes briefly meditators might remain in that position, sort of looking at that. But then we remind ourselves, no, there is something more that can be done with the breath. So I simply bring the mind back to the breath. We do not do any sort of vipassana over those mental images that arise. Is that clear?
Yes, Bhante, because initially when I started, I saw this and I mentioned that to you. So you told me exactly what you said now. So that is why when I meditate now, when I see flashes like that, I know that and bring my mind back to the meditation. And I concentrate only on my mind.
Yes.
The meditation access. Breathing.
Doing according, you know, to the meditation practice.
Yes, with your guidance. Okay, thank you, Bhante.
All right. So, Shriyani, do you want to say something? You're muted, Shriyani. You're still muted, Shriyani.
Can the inner chatter could be present at this stage?
Interesting. Inner chatter, could it be present at this stage? Which stage are we talking about? The document, or which stage are we talking about?
We're talking about now you are actually focusing your mind and you start talking about the experiences and seeing visuals, right? So the visuals, it's like a television movie going, dumb vision, just moving, passing so fast in front of you, right? And could be the chatter also will be there.
Yeah, in this position, usually now when we use the term, the word chatter, it more sort of resonates with a person who does not meditate, right? But at this position, I would say that the dialogue can exist very well. It can exist, but not as aggressive as the chatter is. It's very aggressive, right? Here, now, for example, what Devika was mentioning, there will be dialogue there for sure. With what Hemali was mentioning, there might be a very reduced amount of dialogue, right? Very reduced amount of dialogue, right?
Okay. So we are almost towards the one-pointedness?
No, it's very personality driven. Sometimes certain personalities, they don't have a very loud internal dialogue, right? Certain personalities are like that. Unfortunately, I could say for myself, starting off, I was, in the more negative personality, which was very loud chatter, right? So that then in turn slowly comes to reduce. It reduces with the power of awareness. It reduces with the power of awareness. Also, mind you, Shriyani, that, for example, in this position, if we take the dialogue that we are referring to right now, this position, people can be stuck in this position for months. Stillness, tranquility, bliss exists. However, metaning israta yanna kramayak hawwenne.
So this is where you are at the one-pointedness? It's in the ekagrata? Not yet.
No. The thing is, this is the thing. Ekagrata is a position of mind simply where you have one object. Now you see, the subtle reflection of the mind in the breath is now almost a sole object in awareness. So there is ekagrata. Right? Now, all of us, even through our initial phases in meditation, would experience ekagrata. The problem that we would have is maintaining that ekagrata. Right? So here, what it sort of alludes to is a position where the ekagrata is more prolonged, where we have cultivated a skill where now the breath becomes a sole object of ours, simply. Right? But I hope the ekagrata isn't, because the more that you want ekagrata will not come to you.
Yeah, indeed. I understand.
No? The manners of the world, in our faces again and again, whatever we try to do. What you want, you don't get.
Yeah.
So, now, moving on. Is that clear? Does anyone have any more questions?
Bhante.
Yeah?
No. Yeah. Thank you, Bhante.
I think, Hare. So, this refined concept, because of ignoring fluctuations in detail, right? Now, this is where when, people who are very logical, right? People who have a characteristic of always analyzing and sometimes over-analyzing things, this is where this can become a rather disadvantage, right? A rather disadvantage, because as a part of our personality, we love the detail. Right? So in the practice, what we come to then do is to Be okay with the present. Do you understand what I'm trying to allude to? Simply being okay with what is and what you see, what the insights are, without trying to break apart and further dig into it, because that is a part of letting go. That is a part of letting go, right? So here, ignoring fluctuations in detail has an enduring quality which outlives the changing physical phenomena it is derived from. In just the same way, then the concept of self has an enduring quality which outlives the body. Which outlives the body. Which means this is again talking about that position where the breath, the mental object of the breath, remains, prolongs far more longer than the physical existence of that respective breath. Do you understand? Because here, this is not, do not misunderstand this to be clinging, right? This is not clinging. Think about the experience of, have you experienced a position where you've meditated for an hour or maybe more or maybe lesser, and you just simply feel that you've just meditated for like 5 minutes or maybe a minute? The time measurement is now, has sort of gone off, where you are present within that experience fully without any consideration of measuring it or thinking of how long you've been in it, so immersed in the experience that time just flutters away. It doesn't exist, right? That experience is similar to this, where we are immersed with that object being, going to the earlier paragraph, soul awareness, soul object in awareness. Because of this, everything else, every other construct disappears. Every other construct disappears. You don't have to do anything about it. Every other construct disappears, and you are simply with that object. At that time, we find that that object endures longer than its respective physical part. Yeah. Like, for example, the kasina. We took the mental object of the kasina, Aloka kasina, any of the Vanna kasinas, or the Patavi Apo Tejo Vayu kasinas. We take the kasina, we move from that location to a different location and continue our practice. Now the kasina is elsewhere, and the kasina, maybe the Patavi kasina, has already been sort of washed away with the rain. But you have the object. The object has prolonged. The physical counterpart is no more. And it is of no encumbrance to your practice, right? Just in the same way that the concept of self has an enduring quality which outlives the body. It normally appears to the meditator as a brilliant light of awesome power, yet exquisite refinement. As the fluctuations in consciousness even out, change fades away. Right? Change fades away. Now, of course, it is referring to a position. It's not talking about the more sort of grim colors. It's directly talking about the more sort of luminous, or the most luminous color, which is bright orange, yellow. It's a mix between yellow, orange, and gold. That sort of luminous, it's talking about that luminosity, that position, because all the rest of the positions are irrelevant. Do you understand? Right? නිමිත්ත මේ මට්ටමට ප්‍රභාස්වර මට්ටමකට එනකන් all the rest, the gloomy burgundy, maroons, the browns, the mud oranges, none of that really matters. It doesn't say anything, right? But when we come to a position where this nimitta is as radiant as the sun, that says something, because that's a sign where there is clarity of object and mind. Do you understand? Yeah. Is that clear? Does anyone have a question? Right. As the fluctuations in consciousness even out, change fades away, we find ourselves in a still position. Because the fluctuations have evened out. The fluctuations is changes in vitarka. Changing from one object to the other, the fascination and maybe the desperation we at times have with detail, knowing what is going on. Here, it is not about self, Atma Sanya, trying to know what is going on. It's more about simply being present, being. Is that clear? Yeah. Change fades away. One more. Yes.
It's a question. What you experience now, still the samatha contemplation, and because the bright object, is part of the samatha, right? And so when you move from samatha to vidarshana, then you won't get that.
No, you can.
Am I right?
No, you can get it. Damsari.
You still can get it.
You can get it.
Okay.
Yeah. And remember here, yes, it is more samatha at this position.
Yeah.
And use that prabhasa nimitta to go into jhana. We can use it to go into jhana.
Yeah, okay.
We can simply continue, which we will be going into or have already gone into, but both in the positions of samatha and vipassana,
Okay.
the nimittas can arise.
Yeah, okay.
The nimittas can arise.
Can arise. But in vipassana, we have to ignore the nimitta.
I would say up until a certain extent, in both cases, we ignore the nimitta.
Yeah. What I have read actually in the samatha, you give more prominence to nimitta.
Yes.
That's a sort of a sign of your achievement.
Yeah. So here, mind you,
yeah,
text, Achan Sujato's text,
yeah,
that it is simply bringing up the prabhasara nimitta, right?
okay.
Where, awesome power and yet exquisite refinement. It is bringing up a sense, the prabhasara nimitta. We will have nimittas before this.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Even in samatha meditation Dhamsire, we don't focus on, if we are going through the route of Anapana, we do not focus on the weaker nimittas, because the nimitta is an extent of the skill we have in awareness.
Okay.
Almost as an extended arm, right? An extension of our minds, in a way, right? But up until the nimitta is not formed proper, we do not give any form of attention to it.
Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Thank you, Bante.
I can't hear what you're saying.
Then the kalin kala.
Exactly. Hare. Now coming back. As the fluctuations in consciousness even out, change fades away. No one need no longer rely on memories of past experience to interpret the present moment, right? One no longer rely on memories of past experiences to interpret the present moment. What is this? Now, it's talking about the same thing with regards to, even with the breath, we kind of reminisce the experience we had with the breath to go into that position of breath in this particular sitting, right? Which is that sort of, in a way, the mental image of whatever understanding we have of the breath, right? Or any other meditation. Now, because we have truly embraced the meditation and we have come into a position of understanding, true understanding, over the position of this sense of ekankata with the object, now we no longer need to go into past realizations of the breath or past images of the breath to tap into the present moment awareness over the breath. Do you understand? Is that clear? When you sit down, when you close your eyes, you find yourself conveniently at the position that you have attained to. And depending on how many attainments or achievements that you've had, let us say, you do Anapana. I'm just giving an example, not that you should do this. Let's say you have done Anapana, you've practiced Anapana, and then as a supporting meditation, you've been doing Marananusati. And through the Marananusati, you've come into a particular position, right? Now, in both practices, when you arrive at that particular stage, you can go into the breath as you wish, or you can go into that particular stage in Marananusati if that is your wish, right? This is the strength of the wholesome mind. This is the power of consciousness at this position, right? At that position. Yeah. The contrast on which time depends is not evident. And past and future disappear in a seamless flow of the present. Past and future also disappears. One pointedness in time. One pointedness in time. It almost feels as if everything is in one position. Stable, still. The contents of the experience become so rarefied that the signs and summaries are rendered superfluous. A deeper mode of knowing emerges. A deeper mode of knowing emerges. This is almost as if our first kind of, what's the word? Not hallmark. I forgot that word. Sort of a position that is like your truest sort of position that you can be very confident of. And you will know at that time, okay, what you feel at this time is, okay, I've made it across the first stage almost. I've made it, not cut the almost out, that was my addition. I've made it across the first stage, the beginning. Can anyone relate to this? Can anyone relate to this?
Bhante, I can tell you some example, Bhante. When I at one position, I understood like from Buddha, the message was given through you or something like that. The right thing came because of Buddha Putra. I told to Lettuce also that I feel like you like a Buddha Putra, Buddha Putra, and the message came like confidence, something like that.
While you're embarrassing me, please don't. Yeah. Now, can you relate?
No,
to
I mean that Buddha's advice or something like that. A real something.
Well,
Direct advice came or something like that. I mean, it's real. I don't know how to say that, Bante.
I understand what you're saying, and probably the reason why is because I mean this is one of those sort of hallmarks of experience that every sort of meditating monk or person or whoever is a meditator, vipassana meditator on the path would experience, and this is such a memorable moment. It is such a memorable moment because this is the first time that you would ever come into this moment, and it's wonderful. It's amazing. And the feeling that you have is also so amazing because finally, after all your troubles of, trying to balance, now it's seamless. You sit and you're there, right? Almost as if you own it. You really do. So it is not something that you would easily forget. So it is very much experiential, and I guess maybe that is sort of translating through. Yeah. So Shriyani, you wanted to say something?
Yes, Bante. I do recollect my memory, that particular experience. And also, I was stuck in the experience for a long, long while. I did not know how to get into Vipassana. And I was going on the Samatha track for a long while. And I remember my teacher I was practicing at that time was how to steer me into Vipassana. And then what happened is, I will come to Vipassana. I will keep going back again to the Samatha. For a long while, I had that experience, and it was a very wonderful place to be there. Just, I don't know, that's how I experienced. But now I learned how to, when I'm in that position, to come to Vipassana. But I was stuck in that position for a long while. Yes, and I enjoyed being there. It was a blissful place.
Absolutely. And this is where, Shriyani, a lot of people who do not know the Dhamma get stuck.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Why do they get stuck? Because they assume that this is it, basically.
Yes. I think the Hinduism it is, isn't it?
No, Hinduism.
They go into jhanas, yes, they do. Yeah.
Rupa jhanas and also the abhinyana. Right?
Abhijanas, yes.
The abhinyana as well. So those abilities are there, right? So all of this would also sort of, it would seem like, oh my gosh, I've made it. I finally made it. Shraddha in the Buddha, the learnings would then sort of tell you, look, there's more.
Yes.
And sort of also tell you, my gosh, if this first sort of hallmark stage feels this good and this pleasant and this bright, right? My gosh, what am I going to experience when I attain? Right? And this is not, we might think, I mean, a person who might have never had this experience might think, tanha. It is not. It's the most purest, most innocent mind that would arise out of Shraddha towards the Buddha. and the teachings. And here it's so much more powerful. Why? Because of the experiential wisdom. You've seen it to a certain extent. Right? And that is what then helps a meditator to progress, to not cling on to this position, knowing that according to the Buddha, more is there in terms of the purity of mind. What you experience at this moment, all of this that we have discussed, the awesome power, yet exquisite refinement, all of these words alludes to one thing, a position, what samadhi feels like. What is samadhi? As Abhidhamma Sutta, you know, wholesome mind. Trihetuka kusala mind. In its finest. And it can only get finer, better, more exquisite in nature, more pure. And you are in just such awe. The Shraddha that arises at that time arises out of such awe. My gosh, if this is what the Kusala mind is at this moment, what is the Kusala mind like at the stage of Sotapanna Buddha, Sakurdhagamyo, Anagamyo, Arahat? You know? So that helps you to move forward. Yeah. All right. And so shall we move forward as well then? Right. Parimukha. Okay. Any others who have any questions? Udayanti, Leti, Sujata, Nira, Nalini, iPhone, anything that you guys have to ask, because we have more interaction with the people with the cameras on, because, you know, I guess.
Bhante,
Sujata.
at the beginning, if you came across, I'm listening actually, but the dialogue, what is the dialogue there in that sense?
Well, the dialogue is, Sujata, basically that internal conversation that you have.
Now, yeah, right. A dialogue has to be in a conversation, all right. But this is between myself and
the ego.
Ego. Okay.
It's really ego on ego, really.
Yeah.
You know, ego on ego. Because there's no self, no?
No, yeah. That's how you detect it then, okay?
Well, anything now, for example, Sujata, now, for example, the thought that would have arisen before you unmuted your mic and said what you had to say, you know, you might have thought, okay, should I say this? You know, I want to say this.
Yeah.
That would originate from ego self.
Yes, that's right. Now I think I get a bit of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That thought originates from ego self, right? Anything, I know we have sort of kind of bastardized the word ego to sort of, you know, be of a certain way. Simply, it is the composition of your views, your personality, your characteristics, all sort of drawn together and sort of compiled into what we sort of say Bhante or Sujata or Shriyani or Dhamsri or all these people. You know, it is this compilation of data that I take as this is me, which is what the Buddha defines through the definition of the aggregates, Panchupadanaskandha. Right? Panchupadanaskandhe tibena rupa vedana sanya sanskara vinyana kerehi mama mage kina samnya.
That's what we call the ego.
Yes. So that is what then all of the data compilation, that is what makes the ego self. So the internal dialogue that you have is a conversation taking place between the ego self that has been created through the attachment that we have towards the five aggregates. Rupa, Vedana, Sankara, Vinyana.
Okay. That sort of things happen, I think, to me.
Very. I'm so sorry to pop your bubble, Sujata. Not only you, all of us.
No, I thought, I thought, what is this? Without this explanation, I wouldn't have known what it was, really. Mm. Anyway, it's nice, Bhante, listening.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So, Parimukha, Abhidhamma interpretation. Unlike Hatha Yoga, unlike in Hatha Yoga, in breath meditation, the breath is not deliberately regulated. But in Hatha Yoga, it is. Right? That is the Hindu one that we are talking about. But a sustained effort is made to fix one's awareness on the breath as it moves in and out in its natural rhythm. Now, I might have told you that there is a technique called the Sundum technique, where the Anapana Sati is regulated. Anapana Sati is regulated. It is a technique that originated or finds it's not in Sri Lanka any longer, but it has originated from Sri Lanka. And then now it's no longer in Sri Lanka, it is, but we have it in Burma, right? And it is a Sunlun technique where the breath is regulated and it is said to allow a person to go into deep jhana fast, right? Where it is sort of a regulated breath where you breathe in and out quite rapidly for about a minute or two. I can't remember the exact details of it. And then you bring yourself, of course, you arrive into a position of exhaustion almost. It is not an easy thing to start with. However, you arrive at a position of exhaustion, so exhausted that you don't control the breath. So, and whilst you're regulating the breath with such conscious effort, now, if you also just do it right now, you use the gross touch of the breath at the tips of the nostrils becomes very evident and clear. And that is taken as a sign to then go into jhana afterwards. Also, when you're exhausted at the end of the minute or two that you have to do it, you start focusing on now, because you can't be bothered regulating it anymore, right? Because you've been regulating it for 1 or 2 minutes straight, you're tired, right? So you let the normal breath take its, do its thing, right? So you're not regulating. So now you know the breath, and then you're watching the involuntary breath with ease, right? So there is a technique of that, but it is a very niche. It's a niche. It's not a wide sort of big kind of technique, but it is sort of proven to have results in sort of taking people into jhana. It originated from Sri Lanka. It's no longer in Sri Lanka. It's present in Burma. But a sustained effort is made to fix one's awareness on the breath as it moves in and out in its natural rhythm. Those who follow Abhidhamma and the commentarial traditions teach that mindfulness should be focused at the nostril or the upper lip, wherever the contact of the breath is felt most distinctly. Wherever the contact of the breath is felt most distinctly. This tradition is mainly based on the Patisambhida Magga and Vibhanga interpretation of Parimukha as being at the tip of the nose or at the center of the upper lip. Parimukha literally means around the entrance. Here, always used idiomatically as an adverb meaning in front. This is an interpretation followed by Utittila, Morris Walsh, Somathera, and Yanamoli and Bodhi. In this connection, the Tian Tai, a Sarvastamadi master, I guess, Chinese, gives this advice for dealing with 2 kinds of distractions. What is a sinking mind? If during the meditation the mind is dull, confused, or unrecordable, while the head drops, this shows a sinking mind. In such a case, it should be fixed on the tip of the nose to nail it there and to prevent it from wandering elsewhere. This is the way to regulate a sinking mind. Again, what is a sinking mind? If during the meditation the mind is dull, confused, or unrecordable, while the head drops, this shows a sinking mind. In such a case, it should be fixed on the tip of the nose to nail it there and prevent it from wandering elsewhere. This is the way to regulate the sinking mind. What is the floating mind? If during the meditation it drifts about and is uneasy while thoughts follow externals, this shows the floating mind. In such a case, it should be pushed down and fixed on the navel to prevent thoughts from arising. Thus, the mind will be stabilized and will be easily quieted. Therefore, the absence of sinking or floating mind shows a regulated mind. A regulated mind. So, of course, we are talking about here Uddacha and Kukucha, Uddacha and restlessness, right? Restlessness, and also the sinking mind would be what's the word?
Thinamidda.
Thank you, Damsari. Thinamidda. Thinamidda and Uddacha. Right? Thinamidda and Uddacha. Thinamidda is sloth and torpor, right? Which causes the sense of sleepiness, drowsiness in a meditator. And then sloth and torpor. And then Uddacha, which is the restlessness of mind, where the mind tends to sort of, drift away into different objects. Modern interpretations. The most modern innovation here is that of watching the rise and fall of the abdomen. Introduced by Mingwin Jetavanasyado of Myanmar, but made famous by his pupil Mahasi Sayadaw in mid-20th century. Right. I am very much looking forward to doing a Burmese trip with all of you, actually. I hope we can go with everyone.
Yes, Bhante, I remember you telling that, and we are waiting for that.
Yes, unfortunately,
Yeah.
Burmese in war. So right. To avoid contradicting the sutras and commentaries, so here, Sayadaw of Myanmar, but made famous by pupil Mahasi Sayadaw in mid-20th century. To avoid contradicting the sutta and the commentaries, the Mahasi tradition has always taken care to present the main meditation practice as the contemplation of the wind element, right? Of the wind element. That is one of the 4 primary elements used in meditation, not as a form of breath meditation. But as we have already noted, mind you, that in Burma, they are very, very strict with the traditions, right? And very, very strict on the Theravada, the presenting of the same information, passing the same information down. But as we have already noted, this method, at least its location around the navel, has been taught some 1,500 years ago by Ziyi in China, which is this part here, right? So which would mean that probably this would have had an oral tradition rooting from India, I believe, in that case, yeah, rooting from India. And because, of course, the Sarvatavada, when we take the Mahayana doctrines and the Theravada doctrines, which we have the Theravada, and we find the reasons for its breaking, most of the time we find that the Tipitaka in terms of the Dhamma, most of the areas are the same. The main sort of breakage was in the Vinaya, right? So we find that tradition sort of passed on. Now, around the same time as Mahasi Sayadaw too, although less well known, we have Li Dhammadaro method, where the resting spots of the breath on which one could center one's attention are given as a tip of the nose, the middle of the head, the palate, the base of the throat, the breastbone, the tip of the sternum, and the navel, or the point just above it. Mahabhuva too teaches, Acharya Mahabhuva is, of course, the Thai master, too teaches a very similar method. However, Jnana Dhammo of the Chittaviveka monastery notes that often people are told when meditating to wash the breath at the tip of the nose, but actually, many people find that this is a distraction. If you would, again, often people are told when meditating to wash the breath at the tip of the nose, but actually, many people find this a distraction. If you look at the sutras, the Buddha never tells us to wash the breath in a physical place. He says to know that you are breathing in and to know that you're breathing out. The important thing here is to note it in time. So I am breathing in at this time, or I am breathing out at this time, right? Now, breathing in at this time or breathing out at this time. Let us see. Achan Ram similarly teaches that one should not locate the breath anywhere on the body, but simply note whether one can notice the breath or not. This instruction is also found in the Chinese version of the Maharaulavada. It instructs the meditator to be aware of the breath if the breath is present or if it is not present. If the breath is present or if the breath is not present. At the time when there is breath, he is aware it is there. At the time when there is no breath, he is aware it is not there. Satipatthana Sutra, right? Satipatthana Sutra, Analayo. In this comprehensive and conciliatory survey of the Satipatthana, the direct path to realization gives insightful comments on the term parimukha, which should be carefully studied. A few salient points should be noted here. In breath meditation, parimukha, usually translated as in front or taken literally as around the mouth, referring to the nostril or upper area. However, such an interpretation is not applicable when the term is used. For example, in relation to overcome the mental hindrances, nivarana, or in cultivating the divine abodes. In other occurrences of expression, establish mindfulness in front, parimukha, occur in the context of forming the determination not to change one's posture until realization is gained, as in relation to developing a mind set on the welfare of both oneself and others, when directing the mind to the reflective understanding that the defilements have been eradicated from one's mind, or as a part of the description of a monk well versed in meditation. It may be worthwhile to point out that the qualification in front appears to be more than a simple part of a stereotype formula, since in several passages in the Udana, it is missing from otherwise identical descriptions of meditators sitting down cross-legged. As such, only in the context of breath meditation, parimukha may be interpreted literally as in the nostril area or the upper lip. However, such a literal interpretation would not make sense elsewhere. In overcoming the mental hindrances or cultivation of the divine abodes, where no watching of the breath is involved. Where no watching of the breath is involved. Therefore, although to understand in front, to indicate the nostril area makes sense in relation to mindfulness of breathing, alternative ways of practice based on more figurative understanding of the term cannot be categorically excluded. In fact, several modern teachers have developed successful approaches to mindfulness of breathing independent of the nostril area. Some, for example, advise their pupils in the chest area. Others suggest observing the air element in the abdomen, while still others recommend directing awareness to the act of breathing itself without focusing on any specific location. Also, mind you, something that I have read with regard to the Buddha's eyes being slightly opened during meditation instructs upon a practice where the Buddha observes or directs his attention to the nose area, right? Thus enabling a higher sense of concentration than when the eyes are closed. We are not used to this. Most teachers don't teach it. However, we do find that the Buddha has practiced such a technique. We also have similar techniques. I remember in the experiences of Venerable Balangoda Ananda Maitreya Thera, he quotes such meditation practices where observing the nostrils with visual observation of the nostrils, which allows for higher sense of awareness over the breath. Over the breath. So now let us go into, all right, let us stop there for today and we will carry on next week. Right? Just to let all of you know, we are having a Dhamma talk on Sunday at 7 p.m. Which is sponsored by Keshari and the friends of Ansumali who have passed away, most of those who are here with us. So we are going to have a memorial Dhamma talk in memory of to share merits with Ansumali on Sunday at 7 o'clock, and the topic is going to be how self is formed according to the Buddha. Right, and I will circulate the post after this with all of you. So just letting all of you know. So take care, everyone. Have a good rest of the week. We are seeing each other for meditation tomorrow morning, and So take care and goodbye. Tērān Sannai.